Hello and welcome to Manibil. This time I'm going to take a little stab at, not exactly a stab at Hume, but a stab at ideas of emotions, passions with regard to reasoning and morality. Sort of trying to combine it a bit, right? This is not a fully formed idea of the philosophy. It's just sort of some brainstorming shit, right? Okay. Um, it bases itself, or what I'm trying to get across, bases itself much in. Let me see if I can move this picture about a bit. Sorry, I didn't finalize my setup completely before I started. Okay, sorry if the text is a little small. I think I will copy paste this text down in the description so you have it. Um, if it's I like to have things on one page, but it's a fairly long text here, so sorry about that. But the point is that there's a very famous quote of Hume, and I've taken also some text from Stanford on an article called Hume on the Emotions, and wherein this particular famous quote is mentioned. And the quote is, to start with that, reason is and ought only be the slave of the passions. And that is from the treatise, um, book 2, 3, 3, 4, 15, right? And in order to sort of encompass a bit about what he might be talking about, Hume, right? It's um, it's an idea to try to understand what he's trying to say. That's something you need to do with Hume, and it reminds me that I might want to get into starting on deconstructing book 2 of his, but it's sort of a daunting work, right? But at some point, I might get back to it, right? Maybe not at this point in time. But what does it mean? Reason is and ought only to be the slave of the passions. It's like you have a, he says it like you have a choice, or you should take care to do this and that. And I'm not particularly fond of that kind of framing it, right? But let's try to dig in, right? According to Stanford, they write Hume is particularly, and this sort of, I have taken some quotes and left a bit out I didn't think was important. So it's a sort of condensation of this particular aspect of this article on Stanford Online, right? You can go read it there. Hume is particularly concerned with analyzing our practical reasoning, our reasoning about how to act. Passions are the engine for all our deeds. Without passions, we would lack all motivation, all impulse to drive to act, or even to reason, practically or theoretically. This gives at least one sense in which, as I said, the quote, reason is and ought only to be the slave of the passions. Um, then they say, Hume also holds that the passions are not themselves directly subject to rational evaluation. In fact, it seems something of a category mistake to think that they could be either rational or irrational. Passions are impressions, strong and lively perceptions with a certain feel and direction or impulse. Reasoning, however, is a matter of connecting various ideas in order to come to a belief it may apply to or even form the circumstances under which passions arise. But reason can generate no impulse by itself. So reason has only an instrumental use. But whatever is other but whatever its other virtues, this model does little to explain why reason ought to be the slave of the passions. Now they sort of discuss what they might actually mean by this. I think it's pretty clear what Hume means is that you cannot have reasoning without that reasoning being based in some kind of emotion. You are not going to start reasoning out of the blue, right? it seems to, I would think, to Hume that what you are reasoning about is always something that is based on some kind of passion, some kind of emotion, or some kind of impulse, something going on inside you that makes you reason, right? I'm completely on board with that. Now, I'm not 100% sure whether or not the reason you have because of some passions cannot stir some new passions in you, right? If you reason towards something, you might have an internal reaction to your reasoning. I'm not sure that that is not possible, but in the beginning, there is no reasoning without some passion, right? And you can say if you have some reasoning and some passion arrives because of the reasoning, then that reasoning you got that passion from originally arrived because of some other passion, right? So when you trace the reasoning passion all the way down to the bottom, you will only find passion there. You will not find some kind of reasoning, because that reasoning would have some passion guiding it beforehand, right? When you think of it, if you sit down and think, right? Sit there, you gotta stand up and think. But there are a gazillion things you can reason about, right? Whether or not how to, paint Tasmania red, for instance, right? There's nothing wrong in that reasoning. But it has some ridiculous connotations to it, right? It's like, well, why would you want to do that? Exactly. Why would you, right? You don't have a passion for it, right? There's no passion. There's nothing to guide you towards what the hell would I reason about that, right? Why would I paint Tasmania, what is it, red or blue? What color? Why would I paint Tasmania blue, right? But I could reason about it. There's nothing wrong in reasoning about it. It's not like this. It's illegal reasoning, right? You can reason by all sorts of shit, right? It seems almost infinite, right? I can't tell you. I don't particularly like infinity much, but or any idea of it, right? But there's countless aspects you can reason about. Now, what you usually reason about is, should I stay or should I go? Should I go to work? Should I wait a bit? Should I ride my car this way or that way? Or because it's all based on some passion you have. You have some inner driving force that spurs you into reason about particular aspects of your present situation or your near future situation or something like that, right? You're not likely going to figure out how to, paint Tasmania blue, right? I mean, if you do, fine. I mean, no problem with me, right? But I'm just using as an example of there are, countless aspects you can reason about that you never reason about. And it points to the situation, or the points to the idea that Hume is getting. It's because you don't have any passion for it. So that's why the reasonings you have are slaves to some kind of passion. Now, I think that the ought he uses here, right? And maybe I should show you my bit down here. And this is my my writing here, right? Where I say, I have added a bit to his quote, right? Reason is and ought only to be understood as a slave of the passions, right? Ought to be is not sort of and it's a poorly chosen term, ought, when he uses that to point to the famous is-ought gap, right? Then he's using this ought here as if he's sort of morally commanding you, something like that. It's a very poor choice of words. And he might not have even considered that he used, when you're writing this book, this might have been going on for years and years and years. And when we read a book, we maybe do it within a few days, right? But he has been writing this book going on years probably. So he has forgotten all about him using that term in book 1 or in book 3 or whatever, right? Or that he used this ought in book 2, and then when he wrote book 3, he had forgotten he used this term ought here. But when we read the book, we have the ought very present, right? So we're starting to connect it up. He used ought there and he used ought there, right? So I'm giving him a bit of, giving a bit of leash, right? And it should only be understood or philosophized or something like that, right? Maybe understood is not the best term either, right? But he's trying to get across, you won't be having any reasonings if you didn't have the passions, right? But then a very, very important aspect, in my opinion, is what if your reasoning skills have been more or less destroyed? What do you have left to guide you concerning morality, right? Because a moral principle is based on a very rigid, argumented, reasoned out moral principle that goes all the way back to a foundational ontology through epistemology and ethics in order to arrive at a moral principle that should be clean and readily available to apply to any given situation, right? Then your passions can only be a guidance to sort of spur the idea of now I might want to apply my moral principle, right? But if you don't have the reasoning skills and it has been destroyed, all you have left is your passion. So it ends up being, I have a gut feeling that this, and I feel that it's wrong, and it's a lot, but I can't reason because my reasoning skills have been destroyed, right? That's why I'm so adamant about you have to learn to think for yourself. You cannot buy somebody else's philosophy and say, I'm going to use that principle, or my mommy always told me I should do this, I shouldn't do that, or whatever, right? No, it doesn't work. Because they were probably, guided by their passions rather than applying some reasoning skills within a moral principle and a foundational philosophy that led them to that principle, right? They are all inheriting bullshit from their parents, who inherited bullshit from their parents, and so on, and so on, and so on. And that's why I've always said, or for many years have said, that parents is the root cause of all evil, or all bad. I don't like the term evil. I got a little carried away there, right? All problems stem back from parenting. And bad parenting arrives because they are not using reason. They are not reasoning. They are guided by their emotions. They start to hit their children. They start to yell at their children. They boss them around and, I have emotions. I don't like this. Behave or I'll slap the shit out of you, right? It doesn't work. All right, reason is and ought only to be understood as a slave of the passions, right? The philosophical approach is you won't have any reason unless you have a passion. Now, if you have a passion, then you need to be careful, and the ought that Hume is pointing to is you might want to apply some reasoning rather than stay in your emotional state, right? So I'm writing here, morality, ? Passions are not a guidance of morality, as reason needs to be applied using a moral principle, right? Maybe it's a bad way to say it's a guidance for morality. It's not a guidance for ethics, I should have written. That's a correction. I need to correct that, right? It's not a guidance for ethics. That has to be reasoned out, right? You could say that it's a guidance for morality, as I might carry on here, right? When I say, I have a gut feeling that this is wrong, it does not work in any case, as reasoning has not been applied to figure out its moral stature, right? I have a feeling that something is wrong. It's the is-ought gap, right? Probably, possibly, right? I have a feeling that whatever elephant doing this, man says that, wrongness, right? All of a sudden. No. You cannot passion your way to morality, right? You cannot apply some ethics called passion or based on passion to arrive at a moral principle. and or something like that, right? But you cannot start reasoning without having some passion, right? So do you need some passion in order to start reasoning or doing philosophy? I think so. I think so. I'm tending to think that, at least, right? I can't help philosophizing. It's as important to me as eating, doing my hobbies, listening to music, or whatever I really, really like, right? Watching old movies and so on. I really like that. It's a passion of mine. I can't explain where it comes from, right? I'm also a philatelist. I like, I wouldn't say I'm a stamp collector. I'm more like a postal history collector, right? I collect covers and letters with stamps on them and postmarks and so on, and collect a particular story within postal history, you could say, right? I can't tell you where that passion comes from. I didn't decide to have that passion. I can only reflect on it, right? But I might want to apply some reasoning to if we're talking philately or postal history. If I see something, oh, that looks interesting, then I might apply some reasoning. Do I really need that, right? Why would I want it? Am I just sort of letting my passions run wild? And I want it, right? And maybe so I sort of switch over to some reasoning and say, well, hang on a minute, right? Just let it rest on at least till tomorrow. Come back and look at it, right? Maybe as the initial sort of, that shiny object syndrome or something like, oh, interesting, right? That has faded a bit, and I can think clearer and so on, right? So there's passion, but then there's some reasoning in order to guide your actions, right? So that's what I'm trying to get to. And when you have been in the mode in your life with passion, reasoning, or passion, okay, maybe I should start reasoning a bit, right? You got into a series of passion, reasoning, passion, and reasoning, passion, and reasoning. And at some point you reasoned in a way where you sort of, holy shit, you got that aha moment, right? And you realize the importance of reasoning and not letting yourself completely guided by passion. Then you start to philosophize. And when you get hooked on the passion of philosophizing, maybe that's when you go down and become a real philosopher, right? Passion, emotions, right, guides me in virtue, where the emotions are the guidance towards whether something is immoral. Then being decided by applying my principle. Emotions are guidance, reason is for morality. What I'm trying to say here is, I think that virtue and morality should be classified as two different aspects, right? Where I see this both ethics, morality, and virtue, right? All sorts of terms being mixed up in a gumbo, right? So this philosophical word stew, right? I would like virtue and morality, or virtue or morality, maybe I should say, to be two different categories. But virtue is your passion or emotional reaction that points you towards whether something could potentially be a problem here. But then you have to be reasoning in morality by applying a moral principle that you, of course, have come up with using ontology and epistemology and ethics, right? So there's something, you have a passion, there's something wrong here. I'm not sure. There's something in me that sort of, there might be something that is not virtuous here, right? You can have something you don't like if I mentioned in my recent video that there was an incident in Germany some years ago, 10, 15 years ago, where 15 years ago, I think maybe it's even 20 years ago, actually, where some guy agreed that somebody else should eat him, something like that, right? And he started eating his penis or whatever the fuck it was, right? And I would say I find that highly unvirtuous, right? But if I have a moral principle that says, well, if you two agree on this, it's none of my business. then I have reasoned my way to say, yeah, I wouldn't participate in it. But who am I to tell you that if you agree on this, right? You agree on it, you should, knock yourself out, right? Or whatever you're doing, right? It's like, and I think that's the problem, is that people's gut reactions make them say, now I'm going to boss you around because I have these feelings. I have this gut reaction, right? I have this emotion and passions, right? And never been allowed to reasoning, and I don't dare reason on my own because I might come up with a system of thinking that is completely different than everybody else, and then I'm left alone and sitting in a cottage out in nowhere, right? But there's no way around it. You have to think for yourself. You can't let anybody else do it, because then you would be saying, yes, I can think for myself, but still I can decide that somebody else can do it for me, right? That's fucking stupid, right? So the emotions is a virtue guidance. Reasoning is when you apply a moral principle and accept the outcome of those reasonings using the moral principle, right? Please share, like, and subscribe. Give me a like. Leave me a comment and consider a donation. Links below. Otherwise, see you in the next one.